Hello students. In my previous class, in English literature part from the book Honeydew, I have explained about the best Christmas present in the world. That was part 1 and part 2. But today I am going to explain to you the same topic, that is the best Christmas present in the world, part 3. So I am reading here that your book. The writer is once again telling, I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning I knew what I had to do. I drove into Bridgeport, just a few miles away. I asked a boy walking his dog where the copper beach was. House number 12, it turned out to be nothing but a burned out shell. The roof gapping, the windows boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mrs. MacPherson. Oh yes, said the old man in his sleepers. He knew her well, a lovely old lady. He told me a bit the mutton-headed, but at her age she was entitled to be, wasn't she? 101 years old, she had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. The fireman had got her out just in time. She was in a nursing home now. He told me that Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of the town. So here that the writer, actually that after reading the letter which had been written to Coney by Jim. So during in the third part, the writer after reading the letter that he folded the letter and he kept very carefully into the envelope. The whole night that he was very much awake, and in the morning that he thought what exactly that he was determined to do, and the same that he did. The first of all, that he went to Bridgeport. It was just few miles away from his house, and there on the road that one boy was walking with a dog. He asked that where the real address that the copper beach was, and house number 12, it turned out to be nothing but a burned house. So here that the burned house means that house was completely destroyed or burned. So he just knocked at the second door, that second house, and he asked the person that really that whether the lady Mrs. MacPherson was living there or not. So that one old person also that he came out, he was wearing the sleepers, and he knew that yes, that he knew very well really that she was a very lovely lady, 101 years old, and she also was actually that he was told that she was living in this particular house itself, but it had caught fire. And the cause of the fire was still not known. Perhaps that she always used to lit the candles. So might be the possibility that through the candles only the house might have caught fire because she was not using the electricity. As she was keeping in her mind that electricity was very expensive. Thank God that the firemen came in the time, and so that luckily that the old lady was saved by the firemen. And then after that he reached that Burlington house. It was on Dorchester Road, that was the other side of the town. I found Burlington House nursing home easily enough. There was paper chains up in the halfway and a lighted Christmas. The tree stood in the corner with a lopsided angel on top. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. Macpherson to bring her a Christmas present. I could see through into the dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. The matrons had hats on too and seemed happy enough to see me. She even offered me a mince pie. She walked me along the corridor. Mrs. Macpherson is not in with the others, she told me. She is rather confused today, so we thought it the best if she had a good rest. She has no family, you know, no one visits, so I am sure that she will be only too pleased to see you. She took me into a conservatory with the wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She had the silver white hair painted into a wispy bun. She was gazing out at the garden. "Hello," I said. She turned and looked up at me vacantly. "Happy Christmas." "Happy Christmas, Oni." I went on. "I found this. I think it is yours." As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. I opened the tin box and gave it to her. That was the moment her eyes lit up with recognition and her face became that suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. I explained about the desk, about how I had found it, but I don't think that she was listening. So finally, that writer raced to the Burlington house. It was a nursing home where that the old lady had been kept over there. Old lady, that is Mrs. Macpherson, who was 101 years old. And there that the nurses were also living. And when they came to know that the writer actually had come to meet Mrs. Macpherson, so they took, first of all, that they offered the mince pie. Mince means that is meat, mutton. That is the slice of mutton that they offered him. And then after walking through the corridor, that they raised that exactly that where that Mrs. Macpherson was living. And they also told that Mrs. Macpherson was really a confused lady and she needed the rest. So she was resting, she was relaxing. And also he was told that she had no family members at all. She is alone in the world. And then after they took him to a conservatory. The word conservatory means that is glass house. That where all the plants are also kept. So into that particular house, the glass house, that Mrs. Macpherson was also living, and with wicker chairs. The word wicker means that is made of the willow trees. There is a kind of that the trees actually that from which that the chair is also made. So that is called the willow chairs. So there Mrs. Macpherson was sitting on a wheelchair, and she was looking out towards the garden. She had the wispy bun. It means that she had a very small haircut, and it was tied as you are looking in the picture of the book. So that as she was gazing out means that she was looking at that towards the garden, and as the writer reached over there, the first of all that he wished that Happy Christmas and Coney. So Mrs. Macpherson's, the nickname was Coney. The writer recognized her, and since that the letter was written to especially for Coney very affectionately from the World War, and somewhere that it had been kept inside the old drawer, and finally that the writer actually had found that particular roll top desk, and from there only that he came to know there was a secret, the drawer under which there was an envelope, and as he that took out the envelope, so inside the envelope there was a letter, and this letter actually was written in the year of the 1914, that when exactly that the war had broken out between the England and Germany. So on the border of the England and Germany, what had happened there? How did they celebrate the Merry Christmas among with their enemies? This all the description was there. So writer thought of that better that this letter should go to the exact person, and after making a lot of earnest effort, after trying with a lot, the writer was able to find out about Mrs. Macpherson, whose nickname was Coney. And now that Coney was 101 years old, and so that he handed over the envelope over there. He recognized her and wished her also a Merry Christmas. Mrs. Macpherson also looked at the writer, and all of a sudden that his eyes also were brightening up, and she also that recognized him, and with a suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. Here suffused with, it means that the glow of happiness spread all over her face. So Mrs. Macpherson, by looking that person, that she also became very happy, and her eyes also were full of glow. Her eyes were also expressing the full of happiness. The writer actually that explained about that particular desk, that where exactly that he had found. And under the desk there was a drawer in which that the envelope was also lying. So the writer explained all the things to Mrs. Macpherson, and Mrs. Macpherson was listening to him very perfectly. For a while she said nothing, but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips. Suddenly she reached out and took my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears. "You told me you had come home by Christmas, dearest," she said, "and here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim. Dear, sit down." I sat down beside her and she kissed my cheek. "I read your letters so often, Jim. Every day I wanted to hear your voice in my head. It always made me feel you were with me. And now you are. Now you are back. You can read it to me yourself. Would you do that for me? Jim dear, I just want to hear your voice again. I would love that so much. And then perhaps we will have some tea. I have made you a nice Christmas cake, the marzipan.